I was 27 years old when my family decided to erase me in public. Not quietly, not behind closed doors. They did it under crystal chandeliers, with cameras flashing, donors smiling, and my father standing at the center, like a man delivering a sermon instead of a sentence. My name is Evelyn Carter. I grew up in Dallas, Texas, inside a world that looked righteous from the outside and rotten from the inside. My father, Pastor Jonathan Carter, was the face of New Light Cathedral, one of the largest churches in the state. Politicians quoted him. Business leaders donated through him. People trusted him with their faith and their money. My mother, Margaret Carter, perfected silence the way other women perfected charm. She measured her worth in gala invitations and seating charts. Apologies were beneath her. Empathy was optional. And then there was my younger sister, Lauren. Beautiful, loud, untouchable. An influencer who live-streamed her prayers and cried on command, turning faith into content and donations into sponsorships. I was the problem child because I asked questions. I worked in financial compliance. Numbers made sense to me. They didn't flatter you. They didn't care who your father was. They either balanced or they didn't. And New Light's books did not balance. It started small. A transfer that didn't align with a donor designation. A relief fund invoice routed through a shell company. A construction payment authorized under a charity account labeled Widows and Orphans. I brought the discrepancies to my father first. I remember sitting across from him in his office, the same office where grieving families had once thanked him for saving their homes. "These are probably timing issues," he said calmly, not looking at the screen. "You're reading too much into it." I wasn't. I went to my mother next. She didn't even pretend to listen. "Jonathan handles finances," she said. "Don't embarrass us by acting paranoid." When I tried again, when I pushed harder, when I refused to sign off on reports I knew were false, the response escalated. I was removed from internal meetings, then from projects, then from the company entirely. The official explanation was emotional instability, a phrase my father used from the pulpit weeks later, without naming me. Sometimes, he told the congregation, even those closest to us struggle with clarity. I watched that live stream alone. By the end of that month, my accounts were frozen. My credit card declined in a grocery store. My phone stopped ringing. Friends stopped replying. Lauren posted a video that night. "Family is everything," she said into the camera, eyes glossy. "But sometimes you have to let toxic people go." She didn't mention my name. She didn't need to. 2 weeks later, I was washing dishes at a diner in Irving, just outside Dallas. The uniform smelled like bleach and old grease. The plates were chipped. My hands cracked no matter how much lotion I used. I learned quickly how to stay invisible. I didn't tell anyone who I was. I didn't correct them when they spoke over me. I listened. People talk freely when they think you don't matter. That was when I learned about Ryan Blake, Lauren's husband, the golden son-in-law, the man whose construction company kept winning church-funded contracts. I traced the pattern at night on a borrowed laptop in a motel room. Transfers, permits, LLCs registered under different names, but signed with the same digital key. This was not sloppy fraud. This was organized. And it wasn't just Ryan. Every trail led back to my father. I stopped thinking of it as survival and started thinking of it as a long audit, one that required patience. I let them believe I was broken. I let them believe I had disappeared. Because what my family never understood was this. I didn't need their money, their name, or their approval to see the truth. I just needed time. And while they were busy congratulating themselves for destroying me, I was quietly collecting proof. They thought the story was over. They had no idea it was just beginning. I did not rush Ryan Blake. People like him collapse fastest when they believe they are winning. For weeks, I stayed invisible while the net tightened around him. Agent Michael Harris never once asked me to hurry. He understood the kind of man Ryan was. Arrogant, impatient, convinced that money was the same thing as intelligence. Ryan had a second phone, a cheap one, prepaid, never linked to his name. He thought that made him careful. What it made him was predictable. Every time pressure mounted, he reached for that phone, and every time he did, he talked too much. I listened as he reassured Lauren that everything was temporary. I listened as he joked with a lawyer about how fast charges disappeared when the right donations were made. I listened the night he said the words I was waiting for. "The real books aren't digital," he said casually. "They're on a drive. Once I'm out, none of this matters." That was the moment the trap closed. Ryan booked a one-way ticket out of the country, first class, no checked bags. He told himself it was confidence. It was panic dressed in linen. Michael asked me if I wanted him stopped early. No, I said. Let him go all the way. I wanted Ryan to feel safe. I wanted him to believe that he had slipped through every crack. I wanted him standing at the gate, staring at the plane, already tasting escape. DFW International was loud that night. Rolling suitcases, boarding announcements, people rushing toward departures they believed were guaranteed. Ryan walked fast but not hurried. Baseball cap low, sunglasses on. He looked like a man pretending not to be afraid. I watched from a secured monitor as he passed check-in. Security, customs. Every step he took made his shoulders loosen. He was smiling by the time he reached the gate. That smile lasted until Agent Harris stepped in front of him. "Ryan Blake," Michael said evenly. "Please don't move." Ryan froze. For a fraction of a second, he genuinely didn't understand. His brain hadn't caught up to reality yet. "I have a boarding pass," Ryan said, lifting it slightly, as if paper could shield him. "This is a mistake." Michael didn't raise his voice. He didn't rush. He reached for the bag first. "What's in there?" Michael asked. Ryan's mouth opened, closed. His face drained of color. When the cuffs clicked shut, the sound echoed louder than it should have. People nearby stopped pretending not to watch. "I can fix this," Ryan said, his voice breaking. "I'll give it back, I swear." Michael shook his head. "That window closed a long time ago." Ryan collapsed into the chair beside the gate, hands shaking, eyes empty. The plane continued boarding without him. I turned off the monitor. That part was done. The next phase hit quietly. Accounts froze in sequence. Checking, savings, trust-linked cards. Offshore transfers halted mid-process. The Carter name stopped opening doors and started triggering alerts. My phone rang less than 10 minutes later. It was my mother. I let it ring. When I finally answered, she didn't bother with hello. "What did you do?" Margaret demanded, her voice sharp and breathless. "My cards are declining. Every account is locked. Fix it." I leaned back in my chair, staring at the dark window in front of me. "I can't," I said calmly. "They're frozen by order." "This is a mistake," she snapped. "Your father will clear it up." "He can't," I replied. "Ryan is in custody." Silence hit the line like a dropped glass. "What?" she whispered. "He tried to leave the country," I said, "with evidence." Her breathing changed, shorter, faster. "You don't understand," she said. "I need access. I have commitments." That was the word she chose, not food, not safety, commitments. "I might be able to help," I said after a pause, "but only if you tell me the truth." She hesitated. What truth?" she asked too quickly. "Everything you've hidden," I said. "Anything not on the books." The silence stretched until I thought she would hang up. Instead, I heard the sound of a drawer opening, then another. "There's nothing," she said weakly. "If that were true," I replied, "you wouldn't be afraid right now." Her voice cracked. "It's just in case," she whispered. "Just something I kept aside." "Where?" I asked. "In the master bathroom," she said. "Behind the jewelry tray. There's a false bottom." "And inside?" "A ledger," she admitted. "And a key. There's a box downtown. Cash and stones. It isn't much." "How much?" I asked. "About 400,000, she said. "Please, don't let them take it." I closed my eyes. That was the moment I understood her completely. Even now, with everything collapsing, she wasn't asking to save her child. She was asking to save her exit. "Thank you for telling me," I said quietly. "So, you'll help?" she asked, hope flooding back into her voice. "Yes," I said. "I'll help." She exhaled in relief. I ended the call and forwarded every detail to Michael. The last illusion died with that message. When the confirmation came back that the assets were secured, I felt no triumph, no satisfaction, just clarity. The trap had worked. The exposure had begun. And there was no way back for any of them now. The car slowed as the sun began to sink behind the trees. "White Rock Lake," the driver said quietly. I didn't answer. I was watching the water through the window, the way the light broke across it in long copper streaks. The city felt far away here. The noise, the screens, the endless arguments. All of it dissolved into cicadas and the soft slap of waves against the shore. I stepped out onto the dock and felt the wood flex beneath my weight. It smelled like algae and gasoline and something older, something patient. At the far end, a modest cabin cruiser was tied loosely, rocking in place. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't impressive. It looked like a vessel built to wait. A man stood at the rail. I recognized him immediately. The same posture, the same watchful stillness. Elliot. Beside him was a wheelchair. I stopped walking. The man in the chair was smaller than I remembered. His shoulders had narrowed. His hands rested on a blanket pulled tight around his legs. For 5 years, I had prepared myself to see emptiness in his eyes. Confusion. Absence. Instead, when he turned his head, his gaze locked onto mine with terrifying clarity. "Evelyn," he said. My chest tightened. "Grandpa?" My voice sounded younger than I expected. Samuel Carter smiled faintly. "You took your time." I stepped closer, slowly, as if he might vanish if I moved too fast. "They told me you didn't know who I was anymore," I said. He exhaled through his nose, a sound halfway between amusement and exhaustion. "They told a lot of stories." I looked at Elliot. "Is this real?" Elliot nodded. "It is." I crouched in front of the wheelchair. Up close, I could see the damage, the tremor in Samuel's fingers, the deep lines around his mouth. But his eyes were sharp, alert, alive. "They drugged me," he said plainly. "Kept the doses just high enough that I couldn't fight back, couldn't speak clearly, couldn't remember on command." My stomach turned. "For how long?" I asked. "Long enough," he replied. "But not long enough to miss you." He gestured toward the empty seat beside him on the deck. "Sit." I did. For a moment, none of us spoke. The lake darkened as the sun slipped away, and the lantern near the stern flickered on, bathing the deck in amber light. "I've been watching you," Samuel said finally. "Long before you lost everything." I swallowed. "Then why didn't you stop it?" He didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was steady. "Because I needed to know who you were when there was nothing left to protect you." He glanced at my hands. "Do you still have it?" I reached into my pocket and pulled out the folded bill. The purple ink had softened with time. The edges were worn. The $500. Samuel nodded. "That wasn't help." "I know," I said. "It was a question," he continued. "What kind of Carter are you when the world strips you bare?" He leaned back slightly. "Most people spend that money to feel important again. Others refuse it to protect their pride. You did neither." "You watched me?" I asked quietly. "I did," he said. "You treated it like leverage." Elliot spoke for the first time. "He wanted to know if the rot had reached you." Samuel's mouth tightened. "I built this family on discipline. Somewhere along the way, it turned into entitlement." He looked at me again. "You didn't break. You adapted." The words settled over me slowly. Samuel reached for a leather folder resting against the chair. Elliot handed it to him, careful, reverent. "This," Samuel said, placing it in my hands, "is the renewal trust." I opened it. Legal language, dense, precise, ruthless. "A failsafe," he explained. "It sits above everything, the land, the foundations, the companies. It can only be activated by blood." I scanned the pages, my pulse quickening. "There's a condition." "Yes," he said. "2 of them." I looked up. "You must prove financial and moral violations," he said, "and you must confront the guilty directly. Offer them a chance to stop." A chill ran through me. Redemption. "Not for them," Samuel corrected. "For you." I closed the folder. "You're asking me to walk straight into the fire," I said. Samuel held my gaze. "I'm asking you to decide what kind of power you want to carry." The lake was almost black now, reflecting the first city lights flickering on in the distance. I thought of the diner, the cracked plates, the silence, the feeling of being erased. I nodded. "I'll do it," I said. Samuel smiled, tired but satisfied. I hoped you would. The boat rocked gently beneath us, steady and waiting, as if it had been built for this moment. And for the first time in years, I understood something clearly. The storm wasn't coming. I was already standing in it. Sunday morning at New Light Cathedral felt less like worship and more like a production. The parking lot was already full when I arrived. Luxury SUVs lined the entrance in perfect rows, their paint gleaming under the Texas sun. Volunteers in pressed suits waved traffic through with forced smiles. Above the glass doors, a massive digital banner scrolled the words, "Divine Restoration," in slow, pulsing red. Inside, the air smelled of cologne, hairspray, and expensive desperation. I walked in without lowering my head. People noticed. I felt the ripple move through the lobby before I heard it. Whispers traveled fast in a place built on secrets. "That's her! Jonathan's daughter!" I thought she disappeared. I didn't stop. The sanctuary doors were still closed. The service hadn't begun. Music thumped faintly behind the walls as the band rehearsed. I turned down the side corridor, marked "Authorized Personnel Only," and kept walking. 2 security guards stepped into my path. "Miss Carter," one of them said, already tense, "you're not allowed back here." I met his eyes calmly. "Then you should call your supervisor and ask why I'm listed on today's access log." He hesitated. Long enough. I moved past him before he decided what to do next. The control room sat above the sanctuary like a glass box. Screens covered every wall. Audio meters pulsed. 3 technicians turned in their chairs when I entered, startled. "Who are you?" one demanded. "I'm the reason you're going to keep your job," I replied. I placed the drive on the console. "Plug this in, but don't play anything until I tell you." "What's on it?" he asked. "The truth," I said, "and a lot of timestamps." He stared at me, then at the door behind me, as if expecting someone to burst in and stop this. No one did. I leaned closer. "If you shut this system down today, you become part of the story. If you don't, you stay invisible." That decided it. The drive went in. The folder appeared on the main screen. Everything was ready. I turned to leave, but the door opened before I could reach it. My father stood there. Jonathan Carter looked immaculate. White suit, purple tie. The face he wore when he wanted forgiveness to feel like authority. Up close, I could see the sheen of sweat at his temples. "Evelyn," he said softly, like this was a private moment. "You look strong." "You look busy," I replied. He stepped inside and closed the door behind him. The technicians found reasons to suddenly remember errands. "You think you're clever," he said, lowering his voice. "But this ends today. Sign the statement. Let me fix this quietly." I didn't touch the paper he placed in front of me. "You're asking me to say I'm unstable," I said. "I'm asking you to protect the family," he corrected. "I can make this go away. Money, distance, a new start." I smiled faintly. "You're offering silence." "I'm offering mercy." His tone hardened. "If you don't sign, I will go on that stage and tell them everything you ever confided in me. True or not, they will believe me." I let the silence stretch. "You use the relief fund," I said evenly. "For real estate." He scoffed. "That fund is mine. The church is mine. These people wouldn't understand numbers if you handed them a calculator." The words hung in the air. I felt the recorder warm against my side. "Thank you," I said quietly. Jonathan's eyes narrowed. "For what?" "For saying it clearly." The sanctuary doors opened. Applause thundered upward. The moment passed. Jonathan straightened his jacket and walked out without another glance. The service began with music and lights. The crowd rose. Hands lifted. Cameras rolled. My father took the stage to a standing ovation. "My family," he called out, voice booming. "We are under attack." I watched from the control room as he paced, tears appearing on cue, his voice trembling with practiced conviction. "They want to destroy this house," he said. "They have turned even my own child against me." A murmur rippled through the crowd. "And today," he continued, "I ask you to stand with me." A QR code filled the screen behind him. That was my cue. I raised my hand. The technician pressed play. The QR code vanished. The sanctuary filled with my father's own voice, stripped of polish and mercy. "That money is mine. These people are too stupid to read reports." Gasps cut through the room like a sudden wind. The video followed. Transfers, emails, contracts. Then the still image of Ryan at the airport, handcuffed, staring at the floor. My sister ran onto the stage, panic cracking her voice. "She's lying!" Lauren screamed. "She's jealous! She's nobody!" The screen changed again. Her own video appeared. laughing, flashing cash, thanking the church for funding her self-care. The silence that followed was absolute. I watched belief collapse in real time, and for the first time, my father looked small beneath his own lights. The doors at the back of the sanctuary opened without ceremony. No music, no announcement, just the sound of wheels moving slowly down the center aisle. The crowd parted on instinct. I saw my father's face change before I saw who it was. His confidence fractured first, then his posture. When he turned, the microphone still clenched in his hand. The color drained from his skin. My grandfather sat upright in the wheelchair, a blanket over his legs, his hands resting calmly on the armrests. He looked smaller than I remembered, thinner, but his eyes were unmistakable. Clear, focused, unafraid. "I am not confused," Samuel Carter said, his voice rough but steady as it carried through the room. "And I have not been confused for a very long time." A murmur rippled across the sanctuary. Jonathan took a step back. "Father, you shouldn't be here." Samuel ignored him. "I have listened to you preach about truth while stealing it," he continued. "How I have watched you hide behind faith while treating people's trust like a personal expense account." He nodded toward the screen. "Everything they just saw is real." Silence pressed down like weight. Samuel turned his head toward me. "Evelyn." I walked onto the stage. The lights were blinding, but I didn't look away. "With witnesses present," Samuel said, "I am activating the renewal trust." A document appeared on the screen behind us. Seals, signatures, dates. Gasps filled the room. "Effective immediately," he continued. "Jonathan Carter and Margaret Carter are removed from all fiduciary authority. Control transfers to the sole beneficiary." He paused. "My granddaughter." My father's mouth opened, but no sound came out. I took the microphone from his shaking hand. "I won't keep it," I said. That startled the room more than anything else. "The money," I continued calmly, "will not become another private empire. Every dollar taken will be returned. The land will be rezoned for public use. This trust will fund restitution, not revenge." I looked out at the crowd, faces stunned, hurt, processing. "You gave because you believed," I said. "You deserved better." Behind me, footsteps echoed. Law enforcement moved onto the stage, quiet and precise. An agent spoke my father's name and listed the charges without drama. Jonathan turned to me as the cuffs closed around his wrists. "I offered you millions," he whispered. "You could have disappeared." I met his eyes, steady. "I wanted my name back," I said, "and I wanted the bill you handed me to be paid in full." They led him away beneath the same lights that once protected him. No one clapped. Hours later, I stood in front of the diner in Irving. The neon sign flickered the way it always had. The smell of grease and coffee hit me as I pushed the door open. The bell chimed softly. Darlene looked up from behind the counter. "You look different," she said carefully. "I feel different," I replied. I sat at the same stool. The vinyl still cracked. The counter still sticky. I reached into my pocket and placed the $500 on the counter. She stared at it. "Honey, that's too much." "It's not a tip," I said. "It's a reminder." She smiled slowly and poured me coffee without asking. I ordered pie. I watched steam rise from the mug. For the first time in years, there was no noise in my head. No argument, no defense, just quiet. I looked at my reflection in the window and recognized the woman staring back. Not the daughter, not the problem, not the girl who washed dishes to disappear, just myself. And if you've listened to this story from beginning to end, I want to know what you felt. Did this story stay with you? Do you want to hear more stories like this? And if so, what themes should I explore next? Leave a comment and tell me. And if you'd like to hear more women share stories like mine, please like this video and subscribe. You're not just listening, you're witnessing, and sometimes that changes everything.